Alright, I searched YouTube to try to find a video on changing the strut rods on a vehicle. Now, there were videos on changing the strut, which is basically the shock absorber, but not the strut rod, which is this rod here. This is looking at the front of the vehicle, and that's towards the back of the vehicle. This is a Toyota, no, it's actually a Lexus LS400 '99 model. The tire shop wanted about $700 for this job, and I did some research on the Lexus forums, and apparently it's not that big a deal. It took me quite a while to get this strut on this side. I'm going to do a video of doing the other side once I get this one back together. First thing you have to do is take off the tires. Now, the manual calls for taking off the wheel, and I didn't do that. I think you can get around here. I was able to get around here without doing that. But I'm going to put this side back together, and then we will do the whole other side. As usual with the learning curve, one side will take a lot longer than the other side will. So let me turn this off, and I'll put this back together, and we will start changing the strut rod on the other side. Now, I was told that the tie rod ends might need to be changed, but it turned out that wasn't the case, and this would be the tie rod ends. This is the outer, and that's up there is the inner tie rod end, but that doesn't need to be changed. And actually, this is the one that was taken off this side. This is what it looks like. The hard part is getting it off and getting these bolts lined up to put back in. And this rod there's nothing wrong with this rod. It was the bushing that was shot. And you can just buy the bushings, but you have to have a press to take out and put in the bushings, and I didn't have the tools to do that, so I just bought the full tie rod. The bushings were around $40. The tie rod, the full tie rod, was around $100. So for me, it was worth paying the extra for the full tie rod, not to have to deal with changing the bushing. Alright, so this is the left side of the vehicle. We're going to go through the process of removing the strut and then reinstalling the strut rod. Not the shock absorber, but the strut rod. And that's this rod right here. What's bad is the bushing right there. To get to it, we need to remove, first of all, we need to take out this bolt that holds on the shock absorber right here. And I sprayed liquid wrench on this yesterday. I was able to get the other side off just with a big torque bar. And then we have to take off this bracket, the shock bracket, not take it off, but loosen it up so we can get to the bolts to hold on the strut rod right here. We can loosen the bolts right now, but we can't get the strut out because the strut has to lift up to get it out of the holes to get the strut off. So first we're going to take off this bolt to get the shock absorber loose. Then we're going to take off this bolt and this bolt, which is the bracket for the shock absorber. Actually, it's going to be this bolt right here. Can you see it right here? And then there's another bolt back here that we'll take off. Basically, we're taking off the bracket that holds the shock absorber. Alright, I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to do those procedures. Here's the tools we're using. We're using a torque wrench to put everything back, a breaker bar, and my sockets that I need. You will need one of these angle digahoos, whatever they're called. Anyway, this so you can get to some of the bolts that you cannot get straight in. This is the picture of the breakout of the parts. This is a Lexus LS400 '99, and I got a lot of the information from clublexus.com and also lexusownersclub.com. There's a few postings on how to do that, but no videos. So I'm not a mechanic. I'm a amateur, I'm a professional money manager. That's what I do. But I like to fool around with my car once in a while. So, and I like to save money. Alright, here's the tools we're using as well. And I've got my air tool right here. So once I get those broken, I'm going to use the air tool to speed things up a little bit. Okay, everything, all the bolts have been taken off. This is loose. This bracket is loose. This is still attached. I'm going to leave that on. That's still attached. I'm going to leave it on. Before I loosen the bolts that hold on the strut and loosen this, I'm going to mark this. Let me get underneath. I'll give you a better shot of it. Yesterday I put a chisel mark on it, but this bushing area up here, where the bolt holds on the bushing here, you need to mark it and put it back on there about the same place to help eliminate an alignment. So that's one. You need to mark both sides of it. I'm not sure I like this. I got two markers. I'm going to use both of them. Okay, I'm going to use my other marker too. Alright, I don't know if this is going on here. Okay, well, I'm going to mark on this side here. Kind of hard to do, hold the camera and do this, but I put some chisel marks in, and I may do that again just to make sure I can see my marks. I'm going to do that. I'm going to turn the camera off right now. Alright, I put a couple little chisel marks. You can see right here and here, and another one right here and there, or actually right here. You can see those, so I can line that back up. Now I'm going to get the big breaker bar and break apart or loosen up all of my bolts here. I'll turn the camera off. You don't need to waste your time watching me do that. Okay, those nuts are off. It was these nuts down here, right there, that you can see. Those two nuts here. Now, I found on the other side, getting this bar off is pretty hard. But what I found the trick was, if I used the jack to lift the bar up, it would pull it away from that. And then use a little bit of hammer work and it'll pop that off. I'm not worried about saving those threads because I'm replacing this. But let's see if I can do it with the video going. So I may have to put a block on that. It's pretty high. I can't get it really much higher than this. But let's give it a shot. I'll turn this off and play with this a little bit. Bottom line is the jack helps doing that. But I could bend this, it wouldn't matter because I'm replacing it. Okay, we're able to get that free. I jacked this up, pounded it up, lowered it down, pounded it up some more. You got to be careful you don't bend this bracket right here when you're jacking it up. Now, I'll get that out of the way. I can get this bolt out here. Before, with that stress on there, you could not get this bolt out here. Now it's loose and just popped right out. Alright. So now we can take this strut off and put the new one on. Alright, so this is off. We got it off. This is the new one, this is the old one. These bushings apparently were shot. I'm looking at this. There's a lot of play here. I hope I don't have to replace this arm. If I have to replace that arm, I may have to pay to have that done. That's probably more than I want to get into right there. Alright, now to put the new one back on. Basically, it's the reverse process. A couple tricks though. You need to have this jack to line up the bolts. You cannot line up the bolts to get them back in without jacking this up a little bit. Okay, I've got it loosely attached at the bushing end, and you see, you cannot line up those bolts into that hole without jacking this up. Once you jack it up, it'll slide in just nicely. I'll show you. Alright, how many of you caught me? I put it in upside down. I've got to turn that strut over. Okay. Luckily it's not tight, it's easy to do. Alright. We pulled it off, turned it around and put it back in, and now you can see that we've got to get this lined up with those. This will move forward and back a little bit, but it needs to be lifted up with the jack to get those holes aligned in. And then basically we're home free. And then I'll tighten this up. This is just semi-tight right now, not really tight. It's loose enough that it can give a little bit. And then I'll tighten it up, line it up with our marks, and tighten it up after we get those nuts tightened. Okay, I've tightened those down, torqued them to the proper specifications, and tighten this and torque that as well. Make sure I take this off. Don't want to be driving down the highway with the wrench ready to fall out. Now, the last thing to do is put the shock mount back on, attach the shock, put on the wheels. Well, first put on the cover that covers this whole area down here, and then I'm done. It's about an hour and a half into the project right now. Okay, so we've tightened up the two bolts here. I had to lower the jack to get to the one nut. Tightened up the one nut. We've torqued them to specs. We've tightened up the bushing nut. And now I just have to put the shock brackets back on and the shock back on, put the engine cover, the bottom engine cover back on, the oil drip pan, and the wheels back on, and I'm done. About an hour and a half into the project on this side. Okay, it's all put back together. That's it. That's all there is to it. Now I'm going to go ahead and have this aligned by a professional to make sure everything's right. But I think I just saved myself about $500 in labor. Maybe a little less, but not much less.